What was going on behind the scenes after Jackie Robinson? Were there people pushing for more Black players to be included, other movements going on to try and build on that momentum?
Yeah, there were. There, at kind of hand in hand with the push for integration was a push for the Hall of Fame to also integrate. So you saw that a lot in the Black media, the Pittsburgh Courier, which had Wendell Smith writing for it, and the Chicago Defender, and Sam Lacey was another Black writer who was writing about it. And they were advocating for the integration of baseball, but also saying, hey, these are Hall of Fame worthy players already playing, the Josh Gibsons and Buck Leonards of the world, Satchel Paige and so forth. So they've just continued that push once integration actually happened. And then others started slowly joining that. Some white writers started joining that. There was a guy named Dave Condon who wrote for a column for the Chicago Tribune. He was particularly vocal about making that point. And Bob Feller, of all people, spoke up on behalf of Satchel Paige, who was his teammate at one point, despite the fact that he had not been great in his relations with the Black players that he'd been teammates with Larry Doby, with Satchel Paige. There had been a lot of tension there. He, at one point, said he didn't think Jackie Robinson would make it in baseball. He didn't believe that he had the skill set to do it. He was a controversial guy on this particular subject, but he stood up for Satchel Paige's inclusion in the Hall of Fame right around the time that he was elected, which ironically was 1962, the same year as Jackie Robinson. So there was a little bit of that, but the real push came when Ted Williams, in his induction in 1966, literally on the steps of the Hall of Fame, said that he felt there was a place for the Josh Gibsons and Satchel Paiges of the world. And the Hall of Fame really couldn't ignore it at that point, since he literally said it with all of their leadership behind him. At that point, the wheels started turning a little bit more. You started getting folks like Dick Young, a very influential writer, columnist for the New York Daily News, threw his weight behind that in his columns. And then Bowie Kuhn, who was the new commissioner in the late 60s, had been a fan of the Homestead Grays growing up in Washington, D.C., where the Grays played half of their games. He'd been a scoreboard operator and had watched those games at Griffith Stadium, and he got behind it as well. And they all kind of then pulled together to push the Hall of Fame leadership, which included Ford Frick at that point. He had stopped being president of the National League and then commissioner of baseball. And by this point, he was chairman of the board of the Hall, and was still opposed to having Negro leaguers in. But that conglomeration of folks kind of finally pushed him to do the right thing.